So I do think that I should talk about Slaughterhouse 5. I know that we should be getting through it at this point, but it's an excellent book. It's one of those books that you just don't run across a book like this very often, where it's heartbreaking and funny and dark, and somehow in its cynicism, it also ends up being really optimistic. Just for example, the fact that in the end, Billy Pilgrim's tombstone reads, "It was all beautiful and nothing hurt." That doesn't really seem like Billy Pilgrim's life to me. I don't know about you, but especially when we meet Billy, it seems like everything hurts and that everything is horrible. He's seen atrocious and terrible things. He's had a life that few of us would envy, and that somewhere in there he has a change of thought, a change of framing that manages to manifest itself to where that becomes the ultimate message that Billy Pilgrim is delivering. And a lot of this does come from the Tralfamadorians. And the Tralfamadorians have this view of time that is strangely copacetic with Billy and how he lives his life. And that there's something that really cathartic to Billy about being trapped on Tralfamador, being the arranged husband of this porn star and everything that agrees with Billy in some way, and he adopts their philosophy. Now, it is worth noting that him being abducted by aliens and Billy becoming unstuck in time are two separate things. And I know I sort of talk about this, but being unstuck in time is presented at the beginning of chapter 2 as a fact. I don't think that that's something that we, the reader, can debate. I think that as you're reading this book, you have to accept that Billy Pilgrim has become unstuck in time. Because not only does it start out by saying that, but it starts out with the word listen, colon. And there's no way that he's addressing the reader in that powerful sort of diction without meaning what he says. I think that he's saying, listen, Billy Pilgrim has become unstuck in time. And that's not something that we can sit here and say, oh, well, no, this is a mental illness. This isn't Billy. This is, this is a psychosis. This is a way of seeing things. No, I think that Billy is unstuck in time. And I think that we have to accept that. Now, as far as the Tralfamadorians go, I think there's debate there. Because he does not mention the Tralfamadorians until after the head entry. Now, that's not when they show up. They seem to show up some other point, but it's the injury in the plane accident before he ever brings them up. And that seems important. It's at least important to the other characters, because it gives the other characters this sort of plausible deniability that all of this comes out after this hyper-traumatic plane accident. Now, what else is traumatic in Billy's life? Everything. Certainly World War II. We do have to recognize the fact that no matter how we see Kurt Vonnegut, the author, as he appears in the book, we do know that Vonnegut was in Dresden during the firebombing. We do know that Vonnegut was kept in an underground meat locker and survived one of the most atrocious attacks in history. Firebombing is that they had bombed, he explains this better than I do, but that they had bombed Dresden so heavily that the oxygen in the air caught fire, that people boiled alive just by being out of doors. and that this very well would have happened to Kurt Vonnegut had he and his fellow prisoners not been underground. And you can read about this in some of his other essays, and we know that those scenes are very much taken from his experience. And we believe that chapter 1 is somewhat taken from Vonnegut's experience, and we believe that when Vonnegut says that was him talking or that was him on the phone, we believe that's the case. Is it the case? Again, this is fiction, and we have to allow the author their full use of fiction. We have to allow that the author can artfully put himself somewhere without it necessarily being nonfiction, without it being absolutely true. Wow, I want to get into a big discussion about truth and fiction again, but that's sort of my thing, and you're probably sick of hearing that. So I don't know. I feel like most students end up deciding that Tralfamadorians are part of a mental illness. Abigail, stop it. I think that most students end up feeling like Tralfamador is a figment of mental illness, of brain injury, or something like that. I personally don't. I personally take it literally. I personally think that Billy Pilgrim is not only unstuck in time, but abducted by aliens. Yeah, things add up a little conveniently when you look at who Billy thinks he is and Tralfamador. We tend to like things that confirm who we think we are. We tend to push away or dislike people, things, events that contradict our own self-perception. And that's a little bit of Buddhism for you there in the morning. So it's easy for us to see Billy's Tralfamadorian experience as optimism, and it's easy for us to see it as a struggling mind trying to make sense of things, and a very unique experience. The unique experience of the war, the unique experience of his injury, and of course of being unstuck in time. And look, I'm fine with that. You can read it that way, and you can write your essay that way, and that's fine. But for whatever reason, for me personally, I feel like I have to trust that he was there. That's just me. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And if we had Vonnegut here and we asked him and he were to tell us, it wouldn't matter what Vonnegut thought. Because the reading experience is different than the writing experience. Blah, 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 There's some teaching for you. Anyway, what's fascinating is that somehow all of this ends up pointing Billy in this optimistic message of hope and of meaning in his terrible, tragic, miserable life. And God, there's something to that, right? Like he's we go back to this notion of having a really human experience. That Billy had a human experience, that what he went through, despite all of its challenges, all of its things, that his consciousness is ripened by this, that he's elevated by it, that he's made a better person by it. And that's if we're to interpret, optimism and positivity as being better, I suppose. Or spreading a message of hope and civility as being better. We might as well think that, right? It's not an existential novel, really, though Billy is remarkably absent in his own life, right? I mean, he's completely absent when thrown in the deep end of the pool and sinking, and somebody forces him to be saved. He's completely absent in the war, where he doesn't want to keep marching, and people keep dragging him along. As a prisoner, where he's just moved from one place to another. In his profession, where he has this really empty sort of rationale for being an optometrist, which means nothing to him. In his family life, where he married somebody that he doesn't really care for, that just seemed like a good idea. He has kids that he doesn't seem too attached to. And yet somehow all of this added up to somebody feeling happy. You know, maybe it's never too late. Maybe, everything we go through has some sort of meaning. And yet, what does Vonnegut tell us this book means? Nothing. Putuit, right? What do you say about a slaughter? Billy's life's a slaughter, man. What do you say about it? Dang, man, I'm having a heavy morning now. This is a deep book, and there's a lot to drag out of it. And, if this turns you on to other Vonnegut, I think that's great. I love Cat's Cradle. I love Sirens of Titan. Breakfast of Champions is all right. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. Vonnegut had a depressing life, and there were several times that he was very close to suicide. And he was always upset with the way the world works. The dude lived through the firebombing of Dresden. He watched his friend get shot in front of him for looting a little China doll. Maybe that's some trauma that's hard to get over. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be moving on to another book soon. And of course, we've got the assignment for you. I have a puppy, I'm sorry. I've got the assignment for you, and I look forward to reading those. And it's been a heavy week. It's a good week for Vonnegut. Take care, y'all.